this is a generational factor. Everybody for 15 to 20 years, sometimes as much as 30 years, will have Pluto in a sign. When it's in Taurus, it's there for about 30 years. But when it's in Gemini, it's about 15, 16 years. When it's in Scorpio, it's 15 to 16 because it's an elongated elliptical orbit. It's faster when it's closest to the Earth and much slower when it's further away. So when we're trying to see it in the influence of the signs on Pluto, first we're going to see a harshness in the qualities of the sign. That's how we'll see it. The sign is affecting Pluto, but we'll see that Pluto's forcing issues and making a harsh reality check or doing an audit of the degree or of the sign that's in. So there's not going to be that much frivolousness in the sign with this. There's an instinct to control or be overly threatened. Okay, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean someone's not following you. Deal with it. Okay, so it's not about, in the end, Pluto is truthful, but it doesn't seem fair at times, and this is where you have to this reality. If that's so, what's real? What's happening? This nerve is there in our life. Again, it's easy to see things as Pluto goes through signs in the world. You can see the historical values of it, but I don't want to get so much into that now. Uranus was steam power, Neptune was oil power, and Pluto was nuclear power. And the nuclear power and the transistor and all computers and stuff came since Pluto was discovered. So it's interesting whether you'd put pollution to Neptune or Pluto. You know, like mass, harsh, devastating. The vastness of it is Neptune. The harshness and deadliness of it is Pluto. So we're living in a time when almost every day some species on the Earth is going extinct. And it won't be that long before there won't be any big elephants or big animals left. And a lot of the small ones are going too. So it's not nice, it's real. And well, in the world, all the land is now owned. You either are a landowner or you're a trespasser, or you're living on other people's land. Whew. Okay, when we see, this is where you start to see the significant distinctions with these other planets in the southern hemisphere. They're in the opposite signs. So you'll start to see really the strong distinction of where this fear and power struggle or confrontation or point of truth is in your chart. So the sign that it's in, well, we'll go through them right now. Pluto's in Capricorn. So Pluto in Capricorn is a fear of jobs, fear of work. I got to hold on to this job. I got to have it. I'm in control. I'm running things. And with that fear about the systems, is democracy even democracy anymore? Which country is running which country? Who's running the world? What's happening? This is plutocrats, Pluto in Capricorn. But at the same time, it's opposing Cancer. So you're seeing all the fear about food and home and security. It's all changing, and there's harsh realities going on. Whew. People born under this are born with the fear around what career they could have, around how to hold security of what's political, what's controllable, how's the world supposed to be. So we see it as a very Republican or conservative attitude. Almost attitude, this is my land, I got to protect it against anyone else. It's not a compassionate thing. Politics, if you go into politics, just by signing up, everybody's going to attack you and try and destroy you, whether you're right or wrong, just to make you look bad so they can win. So who wants to go into politics? For what? But politics always goes on. So the Pluto is ruled by Saturn. We're going through all the things with all the signs, but just the Pluto in Capricorn is going to be harsh authority. Whether you're in authority, whether you're relating to authority, there'd be a harshness in it. When it was in Sagittarius, that was when all the legal issues and the controls were being made on copyrights of the web, of the new media, of bitten information, of apps. So much of the virtual reality was set up legally and controlled, and who controlled it and what was right or wrong, that was the Pluto in Sag. Pluto in Scorpio literally was AIDS and wars and battles around how to trust people, how not to trust people. And it was happening in the world. It was also a personal element for this whole generation. I mean, the generation before Pluto in Scorpio, with the Pluto in Libra, that was confrontations over marriage or equal rights. You know, it was the beginning of feminist power, the symbol of the Venus with a cross, with a cross on it, or would be really I'm just trying to remember the symbols, but the harshness of Venus, of femininity, of what was unfair and women taking power and trying to be them, that was the Pluto and Libra generation. It brought confrontations around marriages and means of relationships. But when someone has it, everyone for 15 to 20 years has this factor. It becomes a generational factor of how the world thinks it should be run or fears it should be run. And hence a lot of attentions are became built up in this. So now I'm trying to just make associations of some continuity in this, but the Pluto in Virgo was the Pluto in Virgo was the excuse me, just thinking the dates. Yeah, Pluto in Virgo, like the Neptune in Scorpio, was from 1956 till 1970. Incredible technological developments through that time, from the beginning of rock and roll from Elvis Presley to the big split up of the Beatles in North America. But really, it wasn't until, I mean, records were being put out, phonographs, but there wasn't stereo music till 1965, first stereo album. So, I mean, the technology of coming from regular music to stereo music to colored movies to all sorts of computerized music, this is all the buildup of the technology and the fear and the use of the power of it and the use of it and the misuse of it. Of course, what's ever used for people is also being used for countries. And most personal advancements are also wartime, military advancements. So Pluto in Virgo had that. Pluto in Leo was the generation from when it started, ended in 56, but it started in 42, 38, 39, the beginning of the Second World War till the end of the Korean War, in a way, if you want to look at it like that. But the Pluto in Leo, that generation, they grew up with the wars going on, but they had a fear of not being best and a fear of not having education. So these are the generation that really had a power to have to get education, or power to be a star, or to be a rock star, to be best, that had a really fearful drive, a powerful drive to do that, and a harshness if you didn't succeed. Whew. Okay, so we can go on, but I think it's better to try and we'll just try and go through the categories and see this. But I like this issue of harsh truth and consequences. The audit, where you're doing the audit of, if that's, how come God lets somebody be sick? How can somebody be sick and there can be a God? So really the voice behind Pluto is the fight between, is there a God or isn't there? Is the world just happening and this is just a nastiness and the things that are happening, is a power, it's just the way it goes? Or is there a spirit behind it? wow, this is a very powerful thing. And this, you can't just overnight switch from one to another. It's, you don't switch without being really tested and challenged. We go along thinking there's a certain reality and the world works like this. And sometimes we get pushed beyond our sense of what's real. And we're having experiences that go beyond our belief system, Neptune, of what we believe to be real. And suddenly we wake up and we have to get real on another level. That's what I mean. But with Pluto comes a loss of innocence, a harshness. There's generally, we'll understand these planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, much better when we start using them in transits and watching them work around in our chart and when they hit things and what happens. But it's still a distinct presence in your natal chart. I mean, if you take your sun, you get this huge medicine ball in one hand. You put this one medicine ball in one hand, and you can put all the other planets and close your hand around them. They're so insignificant compared to the sun. And Pluto's this tiny, tiny thing we can't even see. It's out, way out there. Amazingly, it's still in its cycles, in its presence, it still represents a nerve in our, let's call it our astrological DNA. So I consider DNA to have, there's the total physical side of size, shape, things that you have, that you are, but there's also the social, cultural DNA, which is your horoscope measures it clearly. So like, again, I may have used this example before, but if your grandmother hated men and blew her husband's brains out and brought your mother up to hate men, and she got pregnant, hurried to marry your dad, and they got you. Well, that whole complicated attitude is not suddenly lost. It's going to be in your chart. That's what I mean by a social cultural DNA. Things from the past, from other lifetimes, from our parents, still come in and have a piece of us. Some kids are born in war zones, and some may not get to school until they're older. May not have their parents live, and still some live, many die. I mean, there's a certain harsh reality of life, but there's a certain truth inside of it that opens up. So Pluto, if you believe in God or you see a spiritual side, something that's beyond the measurable. Pluto is the fight between interpreting life as a materialistic, atheistic way of its going, or as, is there a higher purpose behind this? Is there a reason why we're being tested? So inherently, this struggle is going on. So you're starting with a predisposition to this from where Pluto is in your chart. And this is a predisposition everybody in the world will have for 20 years. But by the time you get up to be 50, or by the time you get up to 60, the people in the world are being born with radically different Pluto than you, and they're struggling off against you. And that's when you get older, the politics almost looks worse because your powers are being almost diametrically, not I shouldn't say squaring off with the fears and blocks of the kids growing up. So you can get, this is some of the things where you see kids growing up and they don't want to have to pay for all the hippie generation, the post-war babies, the baby boomers. They're all not working, they're all getting retired, and the younger kids don't want to feel they're not responsible to pay for them in social things. So you have, again, the nasty politics coming up saying you can't do that. So this fight between what are socially good things, Neptune, and what are harsh realities, Pluto, you could see them as political parties, but they're factors within ourselves. Can't see the outer planets clearly. I'm just trying to make it a personal thing that's somewhat feasible or a puzzle to deal with. Let's move this over a bit here so I can move it.